Hello, Professor.
Hello everyone. Hello Christina. I see you there. Fantastic. Well, this is a little different format than we have done since the beginning, but it's just another format, and we're going to try to work with this one. I hope you are doing well and that you're ready for a class and you're ready for an excellent week since it's a Thanksgiving week. Therefore, welcome. My quote of the day is when you focus on problems, you'll have more problems. When you focus on the opportunities, you will have more opportunities. So it's important to stay positive and to think that the opportunities are what will drive you towards the right direction. It sort of reminded me when I was driving motorcycles, you end up where you're looking, or when you ride a bicycle, you end up where you're looking. So it's very important to think about opportunities when you are in business. Most businesses, the majority of businesses fail. And I think there are obviously more than one reason why businesses fail. But one of them is the fact that they don't understand this concept of opportunities. They don't understand that these opportunities change, and therefore you have to put yourself into the pilot and the person in charge, the person responsible. Talking about people who are responsible, we have a lady who is in the class whose name is Maddie Paul. And I just realized she quietly never said anything, but I caught this in among other things that she actually started to be the vlogger for the career department in the Nazarian College of Business. So congratulations to her. She's doing these episodes. She's working with people, and that's a very important skill. And she's being recognized for someone that takes opportunity. So here's a student from the class. She usually sits right there in the front, and she, as I can see, doing something very important is reaching out, being public, presenting, and so forth. These are great skills. A lot of people ask me, which college should I go? Well, the college matters, but what matters the most is you to get involved in the activities, as many activities, leadership activities that you can have in the college. A lot of people want to go to do a master, and in fact, um, today, this morning, I had a student from last semester from spring, a very good student from spring. No, actually, she was a student from fall, sorry. And she reached out to me and said, "Oh, could you write a reference letter?" And I was happy to write a reference letter for her because I do remember her. She was in my consulting class and she was very active and she took opportunities, and now she's trying to do her MBA in some other colleges, not CSUN, some other colleges, even out of state. So I really encourage people to make goals. Sometimes life may seem a little difficult and so forth. And so making goals helps you to look in the future and work at what you're doing today, bit by bit, in order to reach these goals. And that is very, very important. So strategies are those high level directions that you have in order to meet your goals, your big goals. And usually these are looking at 2 years, 3 years down the road. So it's the big idea that you want to achieve. So that's what we want to read inside your opportunity section. The strategic opportunity should be made just of strategies. So I sent you a PDF that really highlights what's the most common strategies. That's what you should be talking about. In order to achieve these strategies, what you have to do day to day, week to week, are called tactics. So what you do on a daily basis, that's a tactic. What you do on an annual, the big name for an annual basis, that's called a strategy. And so it's important to see the difference. And to express this, and I've already done it, this is a repeat, is I use those sort of Russian dolls to explain that there are smaller things that go into bigger things and again into bigger and bigger and bigger. And so if you want the biggest one of these are sort of your vision, so that's the grandmother, or at least the one I call it that way. Then the mother will be your objectives. Then the daughter, the oldest sibling, will be the strategies, and then the middle daughter would be the tactics, and then the younger, the toddler, will be your actions, your daily actions, the very, very detailed things that you're required to do. So one leads to another, and it's the example I also gave you is going to the university is a goal. Your vision is to probably have a career in doing a certain role, and then the strategy will be to do a certain major, and then the tactics will be to take certain classes, And then the actions will be what you do on a daily basis, going to a class, studying, reading, the textbook. All of these are actions. So it's important to see that everything we do is broken down into those pieces, and it doesn't have to be just for this class. It's something that you have to understand in general. It is very important to see the big picture, the small pictures, and how they fit together. This is exactly the same as what I just said, but instead of just showing you the family of Russian dolls, what I do is I show you the different level, the big level, the strategies, and the small level, the tactics. Same thing, just a different visual. Here's the same thing again with a different visual, because this time what I integrate is um, is the fact that they are middle level strategies. So the strategies which are sort of the higher level strategies, which are the corporate strategies, and then you have lower level strategies, and then you have the tactics. So here I'm making it more complicated, a little more complicated, but it's more realistic because in the sense that if you want, you have the company strategies, and then you have the 4P strategies. So if you are a business owner, you need to know that. If you are a management person, you need to know that. If you work in real estate, it may not be as necessary and like required to know this, but if you planning to grow as a real estate agent or a owner of an agency, you want to see the differences between the daily things and the strategies which have to do with the sub strategies at the 4P level, and then you have the strategy at the level of the corporation. So the 4P strategies would be annual strategies versus the corporate one, maybe for 3 or 4 years. What else are you talking about, Professor? We are confused. So the corporate strategy are these ones. These would not be your sub strategies because again, the sub strategies are the one that apply at the P level. So for product, you'll have your branding strategies. They could be corporate strategies if this is really the centerpiece of the activities. And maybe for V3, you could think that their brand is in some way very strong, but very under used, and therefore branding may become more than just a product sub strategy, but maybe more of a corporate strategy that they need to apply. But if you are Coca-Cola, you already have a brand that is very established, or Apple, and your corporate strategy may not be to try to grow Apple. Apple is already pretty famous by everybody. So the branding strategy may be sub strategy. So not everything is black and white. There is some gray areas. This is a social science, social technology. So you have to understand things in between. It's not like mathematics 1 + 1 = 2. So what I'm trying to say is branding could be a corporate strategy if it's dominating what the company should be doing, but it could be a sub strategy if it's something that is conducted at a lower level, just at a P level. So you have to use sort of your common sense at gauging where does thing fit. However, the strategies that we have on this screen right now are the ones that would be systematically corporate strategies. They are four, and they are the ones that are the most used. I even told you something based on my assumption. I would say it's 65 to 70% of the time, the one that are the most used. So that's the one that you should remember when you graduate as a business student, because they are the 70% of the situation when it comes to corporate strategies. So you don't have to learn the 20 plus that I provided you, but at least those four when it comes to the big one. So if you sell the same thing to the same people, that's market penetration. If you are deciding that your product is getting old and you need to create a new product, that's product development. If you're realizing that your product is okay, but the target, maybe you need to expand it or create a new one or shift from one to the other. This is called market development. And if you think that you need to totally change the market and jump into a totally different product category, this is called diversification. That's not rocket science. I mean, if you were studying biology, there would be 90% of the things more complicated than that. And that's something that is not complicated, and it's something that's really required because we don't expect a biology student to know that, but we sort of, one would expect that a business student would know that because it's sort of that simple and used 70% of the time when it comes to strategies. And you probably have some level of ambition, which means that you're going to run either a successful business or a business that is growing, and therefore you don't want to be skipping this knowledge in order to do this. See, this is a slide, which is the one I provided you when I sent you a PDF. There was two type of PDF, and one was a big list, and the other one was showing you the different level And that's sort of what I'm trying to explain. The level one is the strategies, and the level two is more what you would consider being the sub strategies. So obviously, if I show you this without explaining you this, then it may become a little complicated because most of what I talk about is strategies and tactics. Now I'm making it complicated because I say there may be something in between the sub strategies, but here I'm giving you a list of what could the sub strategies be. So talking about the different attributes, different quality of the product, the different branding, the different level of strategies, but also talking about the concept of packaging, which can become a sub strategy. In fact, I give you a tip. When it comes to victory, I believe packaging is a very important element. I would not be surprised that there is a group that will put all their focus and all their recommendation on the strategy of redesigning the packaging, because the reality is for a company that's almost 300 years old, their packaging is extremely basic and it doesn't represent what they should be doing. So the packaging sub strategy is a very strong strategy that could be um, elevated at a much higher level at, I think, the corporate level, because I think the company does not seem to have culture for developing a very advanced packaging. So that would be the opportunity for you with your group to work on that idea. So it's an idea, the idea of packaging. So then you're saying, Professor, but that goes against everything you've been explaining since the beginning. You've been telling us that opportunities is what should drive the business. Well, this is very true, and you should do that, and I insist that you do this, and you will be very much evaluated on doing this, and therefore you're giving us an idea, which is the packaging is terrible and it should be improved. So therefore, what you do is, are people buying products based on what they see? Are people influenced by the packaging before buying a product? Does the packaging, you find sources, recent research that talks about the fact that packaging has an impact on people's decision making? Trust me, you will find so much references that will support this. I mean, you even have like trade shows that are just specialized in packaging. You have companies that make a very successful living developing packaging. You have designers that are making packaging. Obviously, packaging plays a very different role in depending what you're selling. I mean, if you're selling um, binoculars, maybe it doesn't have as much impact as if you're selling cosmetics. Gee, cosmetics. I wonder if we know anyone that deals with cosmetics, right? So cosmetics, perfumes, higher end products, product have to do with appearances and beauty and so forth, are very big in packaging. In fact, if you, as an example, if you're looking at a perfume, I think 90% of the cost of a perfume for the perfume maker, 90% goes into the packaging. And so therefore people may not admit it, um, but they are very influenced by the packaging of a perfume, and that's extremely important. Very few people buy a perfume from a very standard type of packaging and design. There are some brands that do no frill. There was a company that started 50 years ago called Body Shop, and that was their business model is to sell cosmetics in standard type of packaging, and they became very successful. Another thing that they were doing is no animal testing. They were among the first to do this. Again, this was like 45, 50 years ago. They've had many competitors. There are many brands, even in the US, that do this, but that's not the majority. And I don't recommend, I don't know if our clients should be doing this. I perceive that that would be meaning that they make the packaging even less attractive than it is right now, but that would be a strong packaging and branding position, which could be taken, but you have to find out the argument that support that. Or you could go the opposite direction, that they should actually go and improve the packaging based on opportunities that shows that people in the beauty and cosmetics and higher-end type of product or product simply made in France. What are the expectation of the packaging of 300 years old company in France making products that are supposed to be high end and tends to be more expensive? Is the packaging better or worse than average? And you probably find that it's most likely to be better than average. So there's so many supporting evidences saying that packaging could be one of the corporate strategies. So elevated, but again, is the packaging always a sub-strategy? May not be always. I don't want to say 100% here, but I'm pretty safe if I say 90% and above, packaging will be a sub-strategy for 90% of the businesses. Okay. Um, this slide is exactly the same, but it's a summary of what I just said for the past 17 minutes. Essentially, you have corporate strategies, which I put at the top of the pyramid, and these are the most common one, the standard that are taught by every professor in every languages, in every undergraduate school, in fact, also postgraduate schools. Not 90% of them, 100% of them. And then under this, you have the sub strategies, which are the one directly related to the four P's. So nothing new of what I just said for the past few minutes. It's just a sort of the packaging, the complete bundle of what I've just said as a summary slide that explains this to you. Now, because I'm going to move into something else, I have a question. Do you have any questions for me? Is there anything else you want me to comment, or maybe something you want to add, or questions, anything? Does this sort of clarify things a little bit? Okay, very good. So I'm glad this clarifies. If you talk about sub-strategies in your strategic option, is this okay, or are you going to be penalized because essentially they look like tactics? Make sure that you use, again, I go back to these, make sure that you use the one that are inside those table. These, I make them a little bigger. These are not tactics. These are strategies, but they're just sub-strategies. So these are okay to use as optional strategies. So that these are way fine. There's many of them. Um, there's the guerrilla marketing. Is it even there? So guerrilla marketing is not in there, but guerrilla marketing is another type of promotion strategy. But it's inside the other PDF that I've created. This one is sort of more of a simple summary that shows where everything belongs. But I give you one which has a full page with more than 20 strategies, and guerrilla marketing, I believe, is in there. So guerrilla marketing is most of the time a sub-strategy. Very rarely guerrilla marketing is the corporate strategy, because guerrilla marketing is not something that you can do for many years. Otherwise, or you can do guerrilla marketing forever and ever, but you have to change the method that you use in the guerrilla marketing. You can't be doing the same one, because guerrilla marketing is actually getting more out of the communication that you're doing by surprising people, doing it in a very different way, or um, um, sort of a shocking way to get more exposure. And so things are only shocking one time. You can't keep shocking people doing the same thing every day. So guerrilla marketing is a sub-strategy. What I want to move on into now is the concept of benchmarking. So benchmarking is very important, and benchmarking is oftentimes defined by looking at what your competitors do in order to learn from their strengths. So you look at your competitors. Here, what's important is to identify the best competitors, because most of the time you have many competitors, and you would want to look at every one of these competitors, but you can't go too much in depth. I mean, unless you're, I don't know, General Motors, but because you have so many divisions and so many people involved in so many different things. But if you're a small business with 20 employees, you try to identify the main competitors and learn from them. And so this benchmarking is trying to see if you can learn from what they're doing and see if you can adapt by knowing their weaknesses and maybe do something that's going to make you better, because you learn from their strengths, you build the same strength, and then you find out what are their weaknesses and you take advantage by going after targets that they don't do well, and by gaining market share. The idea is to grow your business. It's to take away the customers that they have or the one that they could take. Now, moving into, do you have any question about benchmarking? So, in the situation of the client, you do have to look at the competitors. You do have to understand that in their case, they have lots of competitors. So you want to be very careful in the one that you pick. How many competitors should we pick as a minimum, as a rule of thumb? As a rule of thumb, I would say you want to pick 3 competitors. What competitors should we pick? Well, maybe you want to pick, because there's more than 3, in our case, you want to pick maybe one that is French and in the same industry. Maybe you find one that is in the US and is doing something, and then you find one either that is on the cheaper side, if that's the direction you want to go, on the more expensive side, if you want to go, or maybe one that is small and in recent years may not be super famous, but they may have done something really good that make them go from very small to recognizable size and learn from these. So the selection of competitors should not be a random thing. Hey, why don't we pick those three randomly? This look cool. Try to be careful in the one that you pick because the idea, like in the case of the clients, is there are so many competitors that you don't want to pick them randomly. You want to learn and make an argument just in the type of competitors that you selected in order to make your argument. Obviously, of all these things I'm saying, you're probably thinking, where do we write about all of this? Because really, this paper, this group report, is only of 10 pages. I know it's single space, but still, it's 10 pages. This is a lot of things. So what you may want to do is create an appendix, which you call benchmarking, where you may write a strengths weaknesses for three competitors. That may take you 1 page, that may take you 2 pages, and then you refer to this appendix about your competitor analysis inside your 10 pages report. And that way you don't use the whole 10 pages. And you can do this for so many other things. Try to use the appendices in order to reduce the space that you will use in the 10 reports. Now, I took this picture um, in my kitchen. My spouse actually bought those eggs and she brought those eggs. When I was looking at this box, I couldn't help to think how brilliant. Can you imagine? These are just eggs, but these are just fantastic packaging. I mean, sure, you could do better, but the reality is there's not that many packaging that look as good as this. It says so much information. It looks exactly what it's trying to be, very organic, very family owned, very small, very dedicated, very caring, very natural, all these different things. And just all the claims on it, happy hens. I mean, that's one thing is that, you don't want to buy eggs that says dead hen, suffering hen, um, anxious hen, horrible hen. So happy hens, that's positive. Ethical eggs. I mean, what even does it mean? Is there a regulation that says ethical eggs? There's probably no regulation. So they're using terms that make them look good, that have very little foundation and are not checked by anybody. And therefore, maybe they sort of gaining more cookie points than they should by just using words that sounds good. Forage outdoors, so that's good. Year round, so it's like wow, it's not just forage outdoor 1 day out of the entire year. Is all year. So you almost imagine that it's a happy farm with hens that are almost known on a single name basis. Pasture raised, tended by hand. It's like suddenly there's a hand there. So it's like handmade, caring, um, you know, loved and making love the eggs and all that. Small family farm. So it's not a family farm. It's a small family farm. It's almost like the narrative here just are just so brilliant. I just love it. And the name Vital Farms, USDA organic, fresh air and sunshine. I mean, the thing, it's like suddenly I don't want to be a human anymore. I want to be a hen in that farm. It's just life is too good there. And so I see this packaging, but at the end of the day, where do you start? Let's say you want to compete with them. This is where you start. So everybody starts there, and the eggs are judged based on this. Because the reality is, how can you judge the eggs from this? Well, you judge the eggs from the packaging. Packaging is brilliant. I'm guessing the eggs are brilliant. I suppose that's why my wife bought it. Now, I'm looking at these. Which one would you buy? These, and it says egg, 18 eggs. Or you buy it when it's like this. Obviously, it's very far superior. But from this, you have to make a decision. So from this, you do the vital eggs, or you could do this, country fresh, 1 dozen egg, master jumbo, pactive evergreen. Oosh. Obviously, if I have the option of buying this or this, maybe it's just me, but I'm going to buy this for hundreds of reasons. I'm going to buy that one. Could it be the same eggs inside? It could be. Could it be more expensive to buy this? Most likely. Professor, you've been taken advantage by marketing. This might be exactly the same as this, but here you buying it because of the marketing. Maybe, but that's the whole point. Now, that's an option, but then an option of packaging may not be this cardboard, it may be this plastic container. Here, the advantage is I see the eggs. I see that they are real eggs. I'm not buying fake eggs. I can see them. I can see they are not broken. I can see they all have the same color. And I sort of feel safe buying that one because I see it. The other one is I have to make the effort of opening it. I'm so lazy, I can't take the time to open it. So I need to see them through. But some people may say, well, is this really ecological? It's a plastic. How could it be organic? How could it be family? How could it be handmade? It has a little bit of a feeling of petroleum. And so therefore they try to do the best they can with it. And they put a sticker on it. And then you see this sticker and you go, this good packaging. Is this packaging that sells the eggs? Well, obviously, you're most likely to buy this one than that one, but the idea is this one, is it better than this one? Most likely no. This still beats it. So then I keep on going and I'm looking and I'm saying, oh my God, did they do anything else? Well, let's look at where they were before. So before, that's how they were. It was called Organic Valley, and that was their packaging. Pretty much what you see everywhere. So they moved from this organic free range to these pasture raised. So suddenly I was thinking, how could, what happened here? What epiphany, what miracle happened to these people? And the miracle I'm showing you is sort of the miracle. I'm hoping that there will be some students at CSUN in the Nazarian College of Business that are going to do and say, hey, client, you know, you're here and we want you to be here. If you're here, people will buy you because you're cheaper. If you're here, people will buy you because you look better. So looking better sells your product. You don't want to be in the boat where you're competing against this. You want to be in a league of your own. When they see the packaging, they go, oh my God. And so then I searched and I find that Tanameshi is the agency that designed the Vital Farm eggs. And I was like, whoa, that's interesting. So therefore, this company, and that's kind of crazy, and I don't recommend it. Sometimes it's amazing if you find the right designer. So they went to this. It's a girl actually. It's a single designer. She has this business called Tanameshi, which is our last name. She's half American, half Japanese, and she designs, and she's extremely talented. And she took their box, so she went from there, something really, really bad, to something pretty good. So she started taking their boxes and adding things the way she works. And so you can go to the website and she explains all the feelings that she had about the farm and all the feelings she had about the hen. And she started designing. And then she's designed some different version of the box. And then there's versions that they kept for different type of product, and there's version that they didn't keep. But what's very interesting is that's how she designs. She takes a piece of paper and she just traced the box. I tell you what, that's like a kid would do. And she starts tracing the box and starts putting some design on it and starts looking at the pictures. I mean, I'm not a really good designer, but I remember when I was in high school and I was bored by the class, that's what I was doing. I would take a piece of paper and I would start drafting things and thinking about things, packaging and all this. At that time, I didn't know I was going to go into marketing, which I eventually did, and I done this kind of things, and I strongly recommend it because that's how you make something really amazing. And she just designs. She just takes the paper and she starts just putting things together. And obviously, would that style of design be the style that we recommend our clients? I don't think so. I don't I'm not 100% sure, but I believe this is not the style that would fit with the client. So the difficulty here, and that's something suddenly you may be a marketing person and hating marketing because you don't want to do this, you change your mind, you want to do accounting. Or you may be someone in another major and realizing that this is really fun. It's trying to fit all the things in the market. What do the company can do? What do the market want? Are the opportunities? What is the message, the creation of the message? What would be the designers that would have the style and inspiration and connection and match between what you need to do and so forth? Well, obviously, this designer, I sort of looked at all the things that she did, and she didn't just do um, Vital Farms eggs. She also worked for Starbucks. And so she did the design for Starbucks, special products, promotional products. Um, she worked for Burton. So Burton is a snowboarding, skiing apparel company. And so she designed some snowboards. She designed also some cosmetic products. So here we see the cosmetic product from this company. And we see that she totally changed how this business was looking at. And so she has her own style, and so that's a very important skill in business, is to identify what the client style should be. So you don't force a style over the client, is you define a branding style, a packaging style, and you start making the connection between all the pieces. This is extremely important. You may not realize that, but now you may be thinking about this. So many things that you buy is because there's a good match between the designs, a good match between the identity, a good match between the product attributes, because how much it's known recognition, how much it costs, and how you feel when you use the product. So here's an example of an egg. A company designed the egg boxes, and it's game changer for that company. This company is extremely successful, but so many other product companies started using this design. Now I don't want to just look at eggs. I'm going to look at glue. We're not working for a glue company, but let's say if you were working for a glue company. So here what you have is you have a glue, and it's just a paste, like a toothpaste. It's like the glue that you've seen for, like, I don't know, you're 24 years old, you've seen this glue for 24 years. What could you do with that glue? Well, once upon a time, someone had this idea that people were in a hurry. So because they were in a hurry, what they created is a glue where people don't want to wait. So they created the super glue. It's this less than 5 minutes, everything is going to be glued, and that way you can move on. Because sometimes you want it to be glued quickly because you want to use the product right now. It just broke. You need to be setting fast. You don't want to wait for a day, and that's what you do. Now, what happens with for this first company that did that, here it is in the corner in the left. The problem for that company is eventually they got some competitors. And that's what happened when you have success, is you have competitors that eventually just come inside and start copying you. So you get copied, and you have Gorilla and Crazy Glue and Loctite and Flex and all of these businesses and Super Glue are going to copy you, and you end up having competitors. So what could you do next? Well, you go back to the concept of opportunity. What would be the people that want? Because they wanted a glue that glues fast. So what could you do next? So obviously, when you see this company that nobody knows, and then you make this super glue, and the super glue is successful, you can't help to think about this company Scotch. That's like the biggest tape and glue company in the world. And suddenly they didn't create the super glue, but they're just the brand that tries to also do the super glue. So you've done it for 100 years, and next thing you know, there's someone that didn't do anything and just comes and create an innovation, and they take your market share. So then you make your super glue, but what's the problem when you start making your super glue 1 year, 2 years, 10 years, 50 years after everybody else? Well, you don't have a big market share. So you're like the biggest market share when it comes to gluing and putting things together. But because you didn't come up with a super glue, someone did it. So the best thing you can do usually is try to buy them before they become too big, and then they become a problem for you. You don't want to end up being like Sears, being the biggest distributor, and then there's a small company called Amazon that come, and then you let them grow so big that eventually, they buy all your real estate because you go bankrupt. So you don't want that to happen. That happens too often. You want to be proactive. So suddenly what Scotch realized is that the people, they wanted glue, but they realized that the people are putting a lot of glue on their finger because the glue is running on their finger. So they create a gel style glue. So they go to the next step. What is the problem? Problem is people put it on their finger. What would they want? Well, they want it to be not runny. Why don't we make a non-runny gel style glue, super glue? So someone else created the super glue, but now you cut them out by creating the next product. So competitors and understanding the opportunities in the market are very important because that's how you can catch up. That's how you can lead. That's what you need to do in order to see the differences. Now, here's another example. And obviously, as you can tell, the packaging is very important because there's all kinds of different variation of packaging in order to adapt to variation of applications. I don't have all of them here, but there are various ways. Now, you may be someone who has red eye, and that happens to everybody at some stage. And therefore, what you do is you run to get some eye drops, and you go to the store and you buy this eye drop, which is pretty expensive. It's actually a brand that is made in France, and that brand is quite recognizable because it uses this green packaging. So you use the sustain, and your eyes are good, and next thing you know, you become very successful. And what happens? The same thing as the glue is, yeah, there are competitors that come in the market and they try to do the same thing as you. And they use a bottle that is similar to you because they don't want people to not be confused. They use colors and design and all kinds of different specification that suddenly you were doing very well, but you don't do so well anymore because you have competitors and it becomes a dog fight on the prices and the promotions and all these different things. So what you do, you look at the opportunity, and here's the same, is you find the people, when they put it in their eye, it goes in the eye and it comes out of the eye too quickly. And so you have to create a new product for this, and you create a little bit like the glue, the gel long-lasting eye drop. So this time it doesn't run away the minute you close your eyes. It stays there a little longer and becomes an innovation. So take away from this. To succeed, you need to answer a problem. To succeed, you need to be relevant to specific customers. To succeed, you need to innovate. To succeed, you need to solve this problem faster than everyone else. But to continue to succeed is you have to keep innovating. You have to keep being ahead of the game. And that's why it's very important to understand the concept of opportunities, the concept of research, and the concept of segmentation, targeting, and positioning. This to me is very, very important. And right now I'm talking about this concept of new product development. Why you develop new products? You develop new product because you have a job which is called new product director. So you have to develop new product because that's your job. No, you're doing it because you want to keep innovating in order to keep your markup, your margins, your market share, and therefore to stay relevant to the consumer. So you don't just create new products, is you make solutions to problems. So you're not in love with solutions, you're in love with problems. You look for problems, you look to solve these problems, and you look to solve these problems better than anyone else, so that way you can stay ahead of the game. What's very important when you look at competitors is to create competitors tables. I strongly, strongly recommend that you have competitors tables in not in the 10 pages report, but in your appendices, where you're looking at the product attributes and you're looking at a rating of your product attributes and the rating of your competitors. Here is one presentation of what I'm trying to say. Here's another one, which is sort of the same with different color code. Here's another one with different presentation, different way you could present it, but it's still the same thing. Here's another one with different brand names, with different attributes, but it's very important to see that it's key to analyze your strengths, your weaknesses, and your strengths and weaknesses against your competitor for your specific target. Because if you do this for different targets, there will be different perceptions. You can not put the name only, you could put the picture of your product as well. So that way we see the picture of the product, the name of the product, and then we see the analysis. Maybe you don't use the X's and the check marks or the green color versus the red color. Maybe you use the information inside the table. That's okay. You can use all the methods that you want as long as you have a competitor table. Should we have a competitor table? I don't make it a requirement, but I would say on a scale from 0 to 100, I would say 99.999% you should have a competitive table. So is it difficult to do? It's not difficult to do. Does it make your life easier? Yes, because it's easier to refer to it and talk about what you're best at compared to your competitors. So I strongly recommend that. So many people in the draft have said that they have lots of competitors and then named a few competitors, that would be the right place to say, see Appendix 5 competitor table. Hallelujah if you do this, because suddenly it's not vague as saying, so brand X, brand Z, and brand Y are competitors, and you put this in the threads. At least you said you talked about the competitors, so you can be failed by not talking about the competitors, but it's so vague and so little that it would be a weak statement when it comes to the competitors. But if you were to add this table, not in there, but in the appendix, that would look better. So here's another one of a totally different presentation, because here you look at fewer elements, but you will have a graphic that sort of says what's important. So here is looking at the amount of sugar for the different products, but it's again a competitor analysis of the different products. Here's another one that talks about the sales. So that's a very attractive way to talk about the product, and very it's like a picture is worth 1,000 words. Um, Obviously, these look good in a report, but they look extremely fantastic inside the presentation. And if you see this in this class, you don't have a presentation, but if you have another business class with a presentation, I strongly recommend that you would use these. What is very important, and I'm just now because I'm shifting to something else. Is there anyone who has a question about this benchmark and competitors table? Do you see why it would be interesting to have it and save you sometimes and be sort of your analysis of the competitor? Does that come as clear now, a little bit more clear? Yes. Okay, great. So I keep on going. Thank you, Thomas, for having your video on, because I use you for my gauging um, for the entire class. Where is everybody? Everybody's very shy. So I have to very much thank Thomas today, saving the day. Otherwise, I feel very lonely here. Thank you. So when I'm looking at something very different right now, and obviously, if you're someone in the photo world, that will talk to you. But I'm personally someone that really likes photography. I've always liked it. I can't say I was good when I was actually in college. As a college student, I would do lab development of photos. I thought this was really cool to be able to develop it yourself and see the process. Um, Last time I did it is when I was in college. I was also in college in the 90s, and in the 90s, something big happened, which was photographic equipment became digital. So because of the digital, the lab, became sort of less interesting for most people, and including for me, because the issue with the lab for me was, you use a lot of chemicals. It's very expensive, and also I'm not the best at doing photography, and so using um, a traditional camera, I would, get 50% of the picture okay and 50% not good. And in the 50%, I would get a 10% that are like, wow, I'm very proud of myself. So 10% is, I can do much better now by taking so many pictures that I would be most likely to do something better because I have so much capacity of pictures. So I think that's what everyone does. In addition, the technology has gone so fast in improving that what you used to know about photography, you don't have to anymore. The depth of field, the light, and the contrast, and the different angles and all these different things, and the speed and all this. I mean, now you can even use your phone, and you must have, I would say, 99% of the time, at least I can speak for me, is my picture would better with the iPhone than what I could do in the 90s with the most expensive camera, which is kind of sad. But anyhow, that's, I think, the truth for most people. So, however, they've kept selling cameras. What's interesting with cameras is if you look, so I'm going to zoom a little bit here so you can see. Um, with the cameras, is you see something that really happened in 2010. 2010 was the when they had the most sold um, uh, lens option, where you can have some lens camera um, and digital lens camera, and then all the brands sales dropped. I mean, from 121 to 8, a big drop. So it's a sort of a sad news because for the people that like cameras, it's like, what is going on? Well, what is going on are multiple things. One is it's true that people are using their phone and they're happy enough with their phone, but that's not the main reason. The main reason, and it's connected to everything I said today, but only 10% of the people are going to understand what I'm trying to say. But it's I'm taking a chance to only have 10% understand it because it's critical. What's critical is you are wrong when you make a product that is meaningful to a minority. So, how does that work? Cameras in 2010, when you press on the shutter, you will get 5 pictures. Then, if you were willing to spend $3,000 for a camera, you would take 10 pictures. So 1 second, 10 pictures. The beauty of this is because of these kind of cameras, you are able to do most likely this kind of picture where someone jumps and you will get the perfect timing where the ball is on the side and the hand is up and the eyes are closed. Open, sorry. That's the point. Because if you take 10 pictures, if you take 2 pictures, you'll have the same picture, but the eyes are closed or the hand is not up. So it'll be inferior. Having 10, 12 pictures allows you to do this. Okay. The same thing here is you want to take this eagle picture, but you want it to take it because at the time where you press the button, unless you're like Spider-Man, you can take the picture at the same time, have your finger capture the wings when they open, and they're perfectly open at the maximum openness with the best angle and the best color, lights, and sun that goes through and all this. So you press on the button, the camera does the job, and take 10 pictures, and then out of those 10 pictures, you can select the one that are the best. The same thing with this bison. You don't want to just take a picture of the bison. Is you want to take the picture when the bison turn their head and their tongue is out because that's the most interesting one. So that's why you want this camera that has those multi frames and all this. The issue is now the cameras, they take 30, 40 pictures when you press on the button, when you select the multi pictures. So the issue with this is like, why is more less? The problem is by continuously improving the camera using characteristics that apply more and more so to someone that works for the Olympic Game Committee. It's like you or you're like the one or two National Geographic photographer or something. You want to spend $5,000 getting that camera that does those things. So more and more the cameras are becoming more and more expensive because they sell less and less. But the technology has evolved on criteria that are more meaningful to a minority. So the minority of the people are the one that can still afford, and they have to have those 50 frames per second because that's how they make and pay their mortgage. But for most people, you don't want this. It's like 100 megapixel. Why would anyone want 100 megapixel? You want 100 megapixel because you're doing, I don't know, a billboard, like a side of the freeway billboard pictures. And those pictures have to be picture perfect with zero pixelation. And in fact, you could even double the side of the freeway billboard because you want to be able to zoom on just one thing. So if you go on the picture of this guy here, suddenly you would want to zoom just on his fingers and you would want to frame just the fingers. That's why you would want to have those 100 megapixel. The problem with the 100 megapixel is that that's what's going to make you buy the new iPhone because it's 100 megapixel. But when you have a 100 megapixel camera, then you need to change your computer because, I mean, right now you take, I don't know, 2,000 picture a year. If you take 2,000 picture a year of 100 megapixel, suddenly you don't have the space anymore. You have to buy storage. And what happens with the issue of storage? I mean, this happened to me not too long ago. Unfortunately, we lost a family member in October. And so we've been clearing his house for the past month, and we found pictures. And my kids find picture of themselves when they were little and go, "Oh my God, it's so great." There's 5 years difference between my daughter and my son. My daughter, we have quite a lot of pictures until she was 5 versus my son. We have very few pictures. Why? Because they're all inside digital storage. So if my son wants to see it, is I have to give him one of these, a storage thing, and say, "Hey, you want to see a picture of yourself from 20 years ago? Here is old device, for him to go see the pictures. Before we were taking pictures and printing them. So the world has changed. You don't need 99.999% of the people don't need 100 megapixel pictures to be printed because most of the time they will be printed, I don't know, the size for the biggest part, the size of your computer screen that you're looking at right now, which will be perfect with 15, with even 5 megapixel, which your computer could have, I don't know, 50,000 pictures in there, or if it's not more. So the issue is the technology is evolving because of those companies, Nikon, Sony, Canon, being dragged into those attributes and beefing those attributes, which have less and less meaning for the common people and more meaning for a minority. So only the minority can afford them because they're so expensive. So this is a disease of the time that we live in right now. And everything is sort of going through this, is what's meaningful for the consumers. And more people are sort of sucked in doing things that are less and less meaningful to the consumers for more and more money. And the consumers are not stupid. And, the economy is not so good. So people don't have as much money. It's not like they say, you know what, here comes Christmas, here comes Black Friday. I'm going to blow money away. I'm doing so well. People are not doing so well, so they're paying attention and not buying as many superfluous things, luxury things. They're focusing on what they really need, right? So when you develop new products, and that's why I said this is a very important message that will only be making interesting, unfortunately, a minority, but it's the reality of your generation because you're at the beginning of this cycle and you're going to be the one that's going to have to change that cycle by refocusing on the consumers versus focusing on the engineers trying to justify their job. Because if you're an engineer at Sony, what do? Is you try to keep increasing the technology because that's what you're here for, but you should be trying to satisfy the customers. So that's the job of the marketers to find what satisfies the customers and go to the engineer and say, don't worry about adding 200, 500 megapixel. That makes no difference for them. Here is what they want. That's the problem that they have. Come up with a solution for what they have versus keeping reinventing some science for what you got a degree for. Great, but that's not relevant anymore. Let's think like the consumers. Anyway, I hope you enjoy this and maybe you've seen that in your this is things that obviously evolved in the past 30, 40 years and you may be too young to have seen them evolve, but it's a definite direction that I've seen in every product. Even the cars are sort of becoming that way, and that's why there's more and more people buying older cars, and that's why classic cars are becoming so much more desirable, because with classic cars you had less and less was more versus more sometimes become less. Anyway, don't want to bore you up, don't want to sound like an old fart nostalgia of the past or whatever. That's not the point. The point is the consumer is what you try to satisfy. This slide I've already showed you, but I want to show it to you again because that's a slide which I emailed you, which I showed you in class, which is inside the Canvas files, tips, good report, and you find it in there. It's trying to show you that you have to make connections between sections inside your report. So the key problems connect with the critical success factors. The key problems are the problems, the factors are the solution for the problems. There need to be a balance between these two. That is very, very important. Another one that needs to be balanced, and that's the one I've explained every class, at the beginning of every class, is there need to be a connection between your opportunities and your strategies. And the best strategies are the ones that are justified by the opportunities. That is the most important piece of your report, is if your opportunities is written by one person, and if the strategy is written by another person, and the person who write the strategies doesn't want to look at what the opportunity person wrote, that makes no sense. Again, I said this the first week, the second week, the third week, the first month, is everyone should be responsible for at least developing the opportunities. It may be one person more responsible for it, but the best one may come from someone else. But if you have good opportunities, your report is easy. And why is this? And I know because I've done this for 30 years, the students usually at this time maybe 50%, 40%, 50% of the students understand now what I was saying the first week, the second week, the third week, the fourth week, which is that if you now have the best opportunities, it is very, very easy to come up with the strategies. And if you have the best opportunities, it is very easy to finish the report because everything becomes very clear. So the opportunities is what leads everything. It's like the skeleton. It's like the foundation of your project, and that's why the one I was kind of clearly explaining, which was the one about the packaging. You can easily figure out some opportunities where you don't say, oh, the client should be developing a packaging because they have a poor packaging. That's not an opportunity. That's an idea. So there you talk about the impact that packaging have on certain consumers for certain product and markets, and then use this to talk about the fact that their packaging is weak and therefore it should be reinvented. And therefore, you would use a packaging strategy which will consist in doing X, Y, and Z. And that would become one of the four direction that you're suggesting that the clients goes. And that would be the one that maybe you will recommend as the changes. And therefore, there will be an appendix that would have multiple designs explaining the different color themes, the different designs, and then recommending some designs. And then here there will be a disclaimer that these are designs that you developed for the sake of this group report. But at the end of the day, you're not a designer, and that design should be given to a design company in order to develop the design. But what's very important, the design company should not be the one designing. The design company should look at the characteristics that you think should be on the design. Who comes up with the characteristics? The person that comes up with the characteristics is the person that talked to the client, the target, and talk to the consumer target and talk to the client, the manufacturer, and find the best match between what the market wants and what the company is about. I mean, it's an old company, 300 years old. You don't try to do a bunch of things without considering those 300 years. They have a huge, huge, rich history, more than most businesses. In fact, I work for many businesses, but that's the oldest one I've ever worked for. My own business, my own family business is 205 years old. But this is over because my company is from 1821. This one is from 1795. So it's 26 years older than my company. I think that's the oldest one I've ever worked for. Anyway, so with a company that is that old, you cannot have some elements that have to do with the history of the company. You cannot ignore that. That would be a big mistake, I think. And obviously, if you are selling to, I think, Japanese people, the importance of the history may be bigger than American people, but American people, I think, it care. So knowing what and that could be an opportunity. Imagine finding that American who spend money on cosmetics are even more likely to spend money for brands that are perceived as being older and having a rich heritage. That's an opportunity. I just said it. And so therefore you could use something like that and justify the fact that the elements of the design will have some heritage component based on the fact that that specific target in America care for the heritage and wants to see some of that. I don't think that's what should be dominating. Um, but I, but it's kind of a balance. You have to find some elements. I think a bunch of people talked about their logo. I remember seeing a logo at one stage that had to do with something like a sword, like a weapon, a sword. I know that they were making weapons originally. That's how they started. And in fact, the weapon manufacturing is older than 1795, which I find interesting because if you have a company that is older from 1795, why don't you say from when it is? Because 1795 is old, but if you're older than 75, 95, say it. There's nothing wrong with it. I mean, great. Um, the Because I'm French and European, to me, 1795 is not that old. It's kind of weird to say. I don't want to sound like I'm 100 years old, but it's not that old. We have a different perspective when you're from Europe. I mean, my house in France is 1,608 years old, my house. And so it was built by the Romans. So I have a different perspective of the time that we would have in America. And I remember when I speak to people, oh, my house is from 1926. That's the oldest house in the whole county or whatever. 1926, I mean, I'm not saying all the houses are super old like mine. Mine is particularly old, but we have a different perspective of what old. So to me, 1795 is old, but if the company is even older, I think that's a weakness not to actually identify the exact age where this was from. In a reason connected to the fact that if it dates predates this? Where does it date? And maybe the logo should be connected to what it dates at the origin. If they were making swords for knights that went fighting in Jerusalem in 1226. Wow, that's really cool because it's a knight, it's a whatever, and all this. There's a company called Wilkinson, and I think that's what they have. Wilkinson, their logo is a bunch of swords from medieval time or whatever. Maybe they are talking about it, or maybe they're smart because they're not even that old. Maybe it's company is 60 years old, and they're using this because it makes them look more legit and more established or whatever. So it's like, imagine, and you've seen this, I've seen it. Sometimes you have companies that are not that established, and they do a bunch of things in order to look more established than they are. And then imagine our client is like so established that they use the lower, a more recent year for their company. What is the reason? I don't understand. This kind of I think it's good to be humble, but you don't want to be too humble. And so there's a bunch of many things that have to do with branding in this company. I think could be really spruced up. But anyway, I don't want to digress on that. I think I made the message enough. So there are many competitive strategies. I just mentioned the one that are the most common, but again, go back to the textbook on the strategies, go back to my slides on the strategies, go back to the quiz review one on the strategies, go back to the PDF with the strategies, but you will see there are these basic competitive strategies, then there are the different one that I mentioned, which have to do with the product leadership. So product leadership, in some way, I think they do have some of that concept, product leadership. I don't know that they really claim any of this concept of product leadership. In fact, that was in one of the interview. I forgot if it was the first one or the second one. I think it's the second one, the one she came to class, where she mentioned about the fact that they were the inventor of the disposable razor blades, and that's also on their website. And um, having talked to a bunch of people on this project, everyone I talked to that buy a disposable razor blade have confirmed to me that the discovery that the blade is bad is when you cut yourself. Systematically, that's what people say. When do you know that the blade is bad? When you cut yourself. And so I find that it's really a poor method to warn people that the blade is bad. So I suppose there's people that don't cut themselves because they use it just one time. You know, they use it one time and throw it away. They probably never cut themselves. But I feel personally there's something wrong when you use something just one time. So I use it a second time. Do I cut myself on the second time? Usually not. That's why I use it the third time. That's when I cut myself. So I think we probably, many of us that are discovering when the blade is bad when we see that it becomes painful versus the client's blades. What's very interesting is it works less and less. So then we all have a different tolerance about working better and working less. And so therefore you can decide if you throw it away after a month, after 2 months, after 3 months, but they still work after 3 months. It's just that you have to go one more time in order to get the result versus going one time like you would on the first month. But even a month usage of a disposable blade, this never expand. I think you probably can stretch, if you're lucky, a blade to 2 weeks, but after 2 weeks, you'll cut yourself. So for most brands, and so that's an interesting factor that I think is very product leadership. They don't claim it, but I wonder if there would be a chance to be able to claim some of that. That's a strategy. Obviously, it's a strategy that you have to have arguments in order to sustain. So you don't want to just because it's a strategy, say, hey, I like the strategy of product leadership. Let's claim it. You have to have the backbone and the confidence of the argument in order to claim it. So it's not like just a desire. Is you need to be able to produce it and continuously produce it. And then there's the one that just look at the market share. If you have more market share, less market share. So when you're looking at product, and that's where I want to end is when you look at product, you look at different cycles. And what's very important, it's like being the chef of a restaurant. If you own a restaurant, you need to do good uh, cooking well every day, not just on Saturday night, every day that you're open. And so every day is a new product, if you want. Every day is a new menu, is a new production, and it needs to be very good. When I was the owner of a bakery franchise, I had a very hard time with this because um, we had the top bakers from Tuesday to Sunday. So if you were to buy our croissant on Tuesday, it was really good. We won Orange County Best Bakery the first year of operation, and it was by far the best one in Orange County at the time. Um, one rated the best, but at least one of the best on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. On Monday, if someone came to rate us on Monday, I just have to tell you the truth. The business is closed right now, but we would have finished number 25 on Monday. All our baked goods on Monday were not that good. Why were not that good? Because we had apprentice work then shift from Sunday night to Monday. So all the people that we had making the products were not that good that day. But we made that decision because we had a big payroll. We had 14 employees in just one bakery, 14 employees. I mean, it was a lot to run. And so we had less people on Monday as well versus every day of the week. We are really busy. So we decided to just make that one the lose. And it's very common. And that's the top bakeries. That's what they do. And the other option that we had is we had reheat. So we were reheating stuff that were made on Sunday. But because they were reheated, so because they were still inferior to the Sunday product or whatever. But my point is that every day we had one product. Most businesses don't have an everyday product. If you're like a car manufacturer, is you just have a model with a certain lifespan, 5 years, and every 5 years you change it. If you are like Mercedes or something, every year, if you're Hyundai, Kia, you change the model. So what is very important is to think about the longevity of your business. So you have to create product three when product one is going down and product two is replacing it, and you're launching product three. So you have this life cycle in order to constantly have product in a stage of growth and its stage of maturity, and not all your product in a stage of decline. If you have too many products in a stage of decline, you're going to suffer for the next few years because you have no new product being created and no new product being launched. So you have to find this perfect balance between all the products being created. The idea behind this, so this is the idea, is you want continuous growth, continuous profit, and continuous revenue. You cannot get continuous revenue from one product that you created in 1999. Is you have to constantly come up with new products. What's difficult with this is there's no warranty that the new product that you create will be the next one replacing your past successful product. So then the rule of thumb is you need to create several products. It's kind of like the spaghetti test. Is you throw it on the wall, some get stuck on the wall and some fall. And so the bigger your company, the more product you're going to try to create. But you don't try to create many products hoping that one succeeds. You do some research, identify opportunity, come up with a plan, and each one of these products is likely to be successful. And you hope they will all be successful. And at the same time, you don't want to launch too many because you may be failing because you have not enough resources because you launch too many products. So there's a balance to find. So if you have the resources for three, you launch three. If you have the resources for 12, you launch 12. But if you have the resources for three and you launch 12 at the same time, you will fail, go bankrupt because none worked because you had no resources to sustain the one that you are launching. You didn't give them a fair chance. So because of this, it's almost like having kids. If you want your kids to go to college, you don't have 12 kids because if you have 12 kids, you're not going to be able to pay college for 12 kids. So therefore, none of them are going to go to college because you have just too many kids and not enough money. So you find this balance. And with the business, it's the same. Is what is my budget? What is my market? Are my predictions and all that? Is you try to find the number that you can launch based on budgets and resources. Another thing that is very important, and it's disconnected from this, but you need to learn about this, is the fact that not everybody buy the product at the beginning. And that's what's very, very important is to understand that there are two groups that you should cherish, care for, understand the most are the innovators and early adopters. The innovators is like the spark that starts the fire. The most important group is the fire one, the early adopters. Most people think that the most important are the innovators. The innovators are necessary, but are not the most important. The one that creates a movement, the one that creates the trend, the one that creates the sales phenomenon, the one that you see on social media where suddenly there's a trend. The trend is not created by innovators, the trend is created by early adopters that makes the motion for early majority and then you become successful. So what's very important is to identify the innovators. For identifying the innovators, which will be creating the spark to ignite, to fire the early adopters. So if you want, is having all your product bought by influencers. Is that good? Yeah, because the influencers may ignite your early adopters. Right. But what's the best is to make a product that you know that the minute the early adopter sees the product, they jump on it. And then use the influencers to be the connection, the conduit, the line that will make the connection to the early adopters. So the product is not made for innovators. The product is made for early adopters. So I go back to my camera ID. Is if you make those cameras with so many attributes, attributes that only 0.1% are going to use, are you going to get a lot of innovators, a lot of influencers? Yes, they're going to love your product. But when they talk about your product to the mass, to the big group of people, it does not create a movement because people don't care. The innovators are the geeks. They are the one influencers. They're so into it. They know all about it. The experts, the opinion leaders. They're going to geek on your product, but it won't get to the mind of the bigger group, the one that they are controlling, the one that they are influencing. Therefore, that's why you have to make this product, which is a consumer-driven product, and you just use the influencers as the one that pass the message. It's not meant for them. If you make products that are made for experts, do not be surprised that the majority that it doesn't become a cultural success. It has to be made for the culture. It has to be made for larger groups, maybe not the masses, but for to be made to become popular. It has to be made to be popular, and the influencers are just the one that pass it. How long can the influencer love the product? It won't be good enough for the influencers to use it. Influencers change their mind all the time. They jump anyway. So they'll use your product 1 minute. They'll use your product 1 day. It doesn't matter. As long as they contaminate the early adopters that are going to use it for 1 year, a year and a half. And during that time, they won't contaminate the early majority, late majority, and laggards. So that's what you need to remember. That's not in the textbook. That may be an AI, I don't know. But that's really what's important is to understand this. If you buy books on how I became rich, successful, whatever, some of them, that's what they explain. Do not focus on the innovators, focus on the early majority. And that's like the whole message. You're going to spend $25 to buy the book, but that's really all it's inside. So this adopter category is very important, and understanding the early adopters, early majority, contamination and play is very important. Innovators are much easier to get to. How do you get an innovator? You just call your product new. If you call it new, the innovator wants it. Then they try it, they love it, they tell some people. If they don't like it, they don't say anything. They won't buy it because it's new. It doesn't have to be great. It just has to be new for the most part. And then when they say it's great, they say why. If the why is great is meaningful to the popularity, then you become successful. Okay. So um, just to finish on this last minute is what's important therefore is to understand that at the various stage of the product is you will have different strategies. First stage of the life cycle is introduction. You make sure people know about the product. Second stage is you try to grow your market share. You maximize your market share. The third stage in the maturity is you try to maximize your profits. Your profits is going to go down in terms of profit margin, but your profit altogether. So you may be making, in the growth stage, you may be making 30% margin, and but you sell only 1,000 products. In the maturity, you may be selling 100,000 products, so 100 times more. But in this situation, you make 11% margin. Your margin goes down. Why? Because you have competitors and the price has to go down. But you defend your market share. The idea is the volume is what you focus on. And then in the decline stage, what you try to do is you try to get rid of the product. Phase out the product that you don't make any money, that costs you too much money, that takes too much resources, too much staff, to give this energy to the launch of the new product, the pushing of the new product, the promotion of the new product, but you can also milk the product that don't need much help. And people are still buying because they still like to buy this product. It still has a meaning. You know, maybe the original product, the classic product that you used to sell, that now is not so exciting anymore, but there's still people buying it. And maybe you revive this product in 10 or 20 years because you become nostalgic or it becomes something that people want to go back and revisit. So it's important to understand that the different stages require different inputs and different focuses. All right. So I was glad to see you today. It's 5:16. The class is finished. I will post this on YouTube. I was delighted to see you. I'm glad that you were able to join the class. Again, thank you, Thomas, for putting your video. I'm very happy that I was able to see you, to have some feedback from you and maybe the rest of the class. Thank you, everyone. Have a great evening, and I wish you a wonderful Thanksgiving. It's time to celebrate. Make sure you think of someone to say thank you. A lot of people think Thanksgiving is Black Friday, and it's not just that. It's also being able to thank someone and be grateful for someone that was someone meaningful for you in 2025 and made a change in whatever success you succeeded. So have a wonderful week and be safe.
Professor,
Yes.
I had a couple questions. Is there a presentation for this group project?
No, there's no presentation for this class, just the
Okay.
report.
Okay. Do we need a slideshow as well as the report?
No, no, you do not need. Just the report. Make sure you follow the format of the report, right? There's a cover page and there's 10 pages, a single space, there's several samples online. Um,
Okay, so like some of the slides that you've been showing, are we gonna need like graphs and that? Like how much visual aid should be in this report?
well, if you look in the sample, I have more than 20 pages suggestions of appendices. And
Okay.
so therefore there's no, it's not like I count the appendices and based on the number of pages you have in appendices, the grade. It's just a question of having some. The more you have appendices, the more you're referencing those appendices in your report, and therefore it enrich your report. So it's not so. What would be wrong is to have 50 pages of appendices and not referring it inside the 10 pages. Therefore, it'd be just there to just to look good. And so appendices are not there to look good, they are there to be used. So, like I said, did you do primary research? Did you go interview some people? Did you create an appendices about the interview? You're talking about changing the packaging. Did you design the packaging? You're talking about the logo. Did you change the logo? Do you have more than five, six bullet points for your SWOT? Put the extra bullet point inside the appendices, right? So all of this, um, not all the appendices that are inside the samples. That's usually the question I get now at this time. Is people say, "Oh my God, these appendices have 25 pages. It's more than the report. Do we have to do all of these appendices?" You don't have to. These are just there to answer the question from Edward, which is, what kind of appendices should we have? Look at the samples. There's more than I could tell you right now as inspiration. Edward, does that answer your question?
Yeah.